When I think about Israel, I think about God's faithfulness. How many times do we ask ourselves, have I messed up? Have I disobeyed one time too many? Have I done something just bad enough to cause me not to enter into God's promise and plan for my life? And yet when we think about Israel, we hear these amazing promises from Romans 11 that the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. What is God saying? What He's called Israel to, in spite of her disobedience, in spite of her resistance, in spite of her rebellion at times, God is faithful to His covenant because He cannot forsake Himself. And so we see this all throughout the Bible, starting at the Exodus story of the children of Israel coming out of Egypt. How time and time again, our people have gone astray. And yet, God's covenant faithfulness says, even when you're faithless, I remain faithful. He's the one who promises to Abraham a covenant. And instead of this covenant being between him and Abraham, God actually enters through the covenant twice, saying, if you're faithless, I'm going to take the brunt of that penalty. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of God. Even as I'm standing here in Jerusalem, as the Jewish people are back in the land that we were promised, not because of our faithfulness, but because of God's faithfulness, that the world would know that He is God. And time again, God has said, I will be your God, you will be my people. And even though we may not see that reality today, even though today we don't see every single Jewish person that acknowledges Yeshua as Messiah, we believe that in spite of our faithlessness as a people, God's covenant, God's promise, God's faithfulness remains. And that's our guarantee as Christians that God will not forsake His promises to us.